Okay.
goes to the municipals. That's what they said.
Yeah, that's what they said.
And this is the transparency server. It services KBP, PPCRB, LP, and UNA. And then it also gets to the Rappler. That's the other one. That's the Rappler server.
Yeah.
All the other stations, GMA, ABS-CBN,
Get it here.
and NAMFREL gets it from the mirror image of the Rappler.
Okay. So is that clear? All right.
But I think, because when we receive the transmissions in the NAMFREL server, we get it in big batches.
Yes.
So therefore, you can deduce that it probably went to another server before it was sent to us. But we cannot pinpoint that it went to a command and control center first.
Okay. Okay. I allowed that because I allow that intervention because that's very important. If there is something Maricor said that's very, very significant, we do not know where it came from. We do not know where it came from. We knew it passed through something, but we do not know where it came from. The answer to the data. The answer to that is very simple. Why? Because the required minimum safeguard of digital signatures were collapsed by the COMELEC. The COMELEC amended the law, which it cannot do. It's not part of its powers, by issuing a circular collapsing the digital signatures. When the figures come here, or from any point here, you do not know where it came from. You don't know where it came from, and at this point, I will not hazard an opinion where it comes from. I will go instead to the second provision. Thank you for the clarification, Michael. The second provision is, so the first provision is do not let it pass through the municipal server before it gets anywhere else. The second provision is ensure the batching of returns in the canvassing series ultimately shows a 60-30-10 pattern as indicated in the pre-poll surveys. All right? So the one issuing the executive order already knows his objective. Okay? And so that is what we saw in the shares of cumulative votes in the 16 official senatorial canvass reports. That was, we see these figures, and they are all in the 60-30-10 more or less delineation. Okay? The vital signs of the 2013 senatorial election using the 16 official canvass reports, using this charting technique. It's almost a flat line, still showing 60-30-10. This is national, 16 canvasses. Another way of looking at it is through bar charts, where ang tawag dito ni June Estrella, mga posporo. Maayos na maayos sa loob ng matchbox. You know? Mga posporo. Again, 60, 30, 10. And you would see here the cities. All right? So regardless, that's actually a first look. But that is on a national basis. All right? Now, the provinces, cities, and overseas locations indicated in each of those 16 canvases in bar, line, and numerical chart presented to you were already complete canvases and not partial returns. the transmission from the PCOS to the transparency server, other servers, were supposed to be, sabi ko nga kanina, nothing in between. They were supposed to be random. See? From the PCOS to the transparency server. Nothing in between. Was the batching of the areas selected to ensure a 60-30 turn pattern? Was this batching selection done? Now, what is the question that the technical people were asking themselves here? Because this showed up that, and this is what Maricor was also saying, from the PCOS, it was supposed to go straight. So all 76,000 PCOS machines sending directly to the transparency server. However, in the report of the canvassing, from the first canvass report, they were not random. They were in provincial, city, and foreign city batches. They were batched. I will read because it's very small print. First canvas report, Antique, Batanes, Dinagat Islands, Guimaras Mountain Province, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, Romblon, Southern Leyte, Baguio, Iligan, Mandaluyong, Parañaque, and Nabotas City. But in the 16th canvas, it was only the province of Lanao del Norte, in contrast. Is this a random presentation? Now, this is important because of these considerations. So, what happened, as Maricor was saying, was 23% of the votes were already showing, but only 14% of the precincts had inputted.
Okay, at about 10 o'clock, we stopped counting, and I think people were complaining because there were already 12 million votes, and there were only 1,666 precincts that were counted. If you were going to divide that, you will be getting an average of 8,000 votes per precinct, which is impossible because the average is about 500 to 600 votes per precinct. Because the maximum is 1,000 votes per precinct. But for a 75% turnout rate, you will not get 12 million votes. What we noticed that, okay, they stopped the count, they corrected it, but the trend had been established and it never changed.
This was pointed out to PPCRB. And I think it was Ernie Del Rosario, who is still on his way here, that pointed this out. One of those who pointed it out, other than NAMPRO. And so what they did, instead of stopping the whole process, they called a Smartmatic technical man who went to and fixed it. All right? Now, I will not comment on that at this point because Ernie, I'll be robbing Ernie of his day in court. Is it possible that these canvas 12 million were already preloaded in the transparency server because they came in too fast? Some precincts were still closing. Most precincts were still closing. And right away we have 12 million ballots counted already. Or that no transmission were supposed to be sent from the PCOS machines to the transparency server. What is the point of this question? Maricor already hinted at it. It seems because they were batched that the canvas already passed through a terminal, a server, a station, a shortstop that I call it because I don't want to be too IT about it. It passed somewhere before it was released to the transparency server. Now, what's the point of that? We will see the answer to that as we go on. The third provision of the executive order: get credible talking heads to insinuate and authenticate the law of large numbers applied to the results showing the 60-30-10 pattern. All right. This is how graphically I would present it, as simple as possible. Because 76,000 precincts, actually 58,000 lang, no? Kasi yung 18,000 nawawala eh. 58,000 precincts direct from pre-cost, randomly transmitting, following the Computer 101 principle, first in, first out. It will more according to their talking heads. It went through a law of large, went through a mathematical application of the law of large numbers dahil pumaliit dyan. So sabi nila, that's the reason why it flattened on a national basis to 60-30-10. However, we already know that it was not randomly transmitted. It passed through a shortstop. Proof right in their own report of where the first to the 16 canvases came from. And so we go back to the same chart. 58,000 precincts direct from PICOS going into this funnel of transmission towards the transparency service, but batched in 16 provincial city and city clusters. Are those still large numbers? No more. So this is no longer, if we still apply it, it will now be called the law of small numbers, which there's no mathematical law that says that. Broken down na into clusters eh. They were not large numbers. So, at that point, Professor Muga said that the law of large numbers apply on, besides on the same population, say one canvass result, whereas additional audit samples are extracted, the shares of the votes tend to a pattern that is closer and closer, indicative of the actual pattern when the 100% of the population is audited. Logically, as I was saying, this law no longer applies to small or differentiated or partial inputs, especially when measured as low as precinct level. And that was what AES Watch, Mr. Pablo Manalasta said. He said, it could have been the law of large numbers. However, it has to be qualified in terms of the small precinct count as low as that level. We have to see whether it sustains it. The same position was submitted by blogger Mike Beduya and a New York Dean of Science in New York University, Michael Puruganan. But all three of them repeated the caveat presented by Mr. Manalastas. You see, when Mr. Manalastas was saying that the LLN could have applied, it was conditional. He was not saying, oh, that is because of the law of large number. No. But could have. However, it must be qualified. So what we did was we analyzed different partial canvases and different populations, expecting this was our expectation. Because we cannot believe a 60-30-10 national. In our study, we were expecting sharp picks and volleys, one, proving that those invoking the 60-30-10 as having been caused by the large numbers, all right, was not true. That this was a wrong national canvas in that sense. In fact, our mission statement was to disprove the same 60-30-10 pattern when the application go as low as the present level. All right? That was our mission. What we discovered instead is the damning smoking gun. So we failed in our expectations. Tremendously failed miserably failed in our setting of objectives. We failed in that respect. But instead, we discovered the smoking gun. Which brings us to the fourth provision of the executive order. Ensure the provincial, city, and municipal results also show a 60-30-10 pattern. At this point, it will give you an idea of how criminal the mind behind all this is behaving and what level of impunity he is performing. This is Zamboanga City, 63-29-7, close to 60-30-10. This is Osamis City, 80 out of 104 clustered precincts, 62-31-7, 60-30-10. This is Balensa City in Bukidnon, 125 out of 150 clustered precincts, 56-35-9, still within the 60-30-10. Bohol is perhaps the most scandalous because Tagbilaran City and all the municipalities of Bohol averaging 62-29-9, also 60-30-10. Mati, Davao Oriental, 60-32-8, still 60-30-10. Davao City, very important city, 60-31-9. Still 60-30-10. General Santos City, still 60-30-10. Now we can go on and on with this, but let's go to some observations.